I'm going to reveal to you one of the primary things that's holding you back as a Warhammer 40K player. If you're trying to win more games, if you're trying to have more fun with your friends, if you're trying to place better in tournaments, you have to understand this. So I'm going to share this mindset shift, and it completely changed how I played Warhammer 40,000. And honestly, it's made most of my games kind of feel like they're almost on autopilot. Not because the game got easier per se, but because my approach to it has become structured, predictable, and brutally efficient. And it all comes down to understanding one really critical thing. 40K is a limited activation resource game. And once you understand that, everything else is going to click. There's only 5 turns to the game. There's only 5 phases per turn. So let's break this down. All right, activation economy. Let's zoom out here for a second. Every single game of Warhammer 40,000, both players are going to get the exact same resources. You're going to have 5 movement phases, 5 shooting phases, 5 charge phases. You're even going to have 5 fight phases. And I think you could argue that you have like 10 fight phases because players tend to combine their fight phases. But that's it. You don't get any more. So your ability to win Warhammer is directly tied to how much value you are going to extract from those limited activations, and how effectively you deny value from your opponent's activations. This means that every single move has to matter. Every shooting activation must pressure the mission. Every charge must shape scoring or tempo, and every fight must trade favorably. Your units are not your real resource. Activations are, and whoever gets more value per activation wins almost every time. So, how do we get more value per activation? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's figure that one out today. Why extra activations are overpowered? Because this is why certain rule mechanics are so insanely strong in this game. All right, you've got certain rules like fight on death or fight first, heroic intervention, reactive moves, your overwatches, shoot back stratagems, even movement surges. So like a blood surge, like a corn berserker blood surge. These abilities are so powerful because they're going to break that 5 activation rule, right? If I have a blood surge movement after you shoot me, well, suddenly I get to move again. This means instead of having 5 movement turns, I effectively get a 6 movement phase. When you charge a unit next to me and I use a heroic intervention to countercharge you, this gives me an additional amount of movement that otherwise I would never get in the game. It also gives me potentially an extra fight phase and an extra charge phase that I would never have gotten. So these abilities are incredibly powerful, and it's one of the things that you'll notice that pro players really like to design their list around. It's not all about how hard can you hit your opponent. It's about how much value can you extract from these activations and how many activations can you get for your units. It's all well and great to have, oh, I don't know, like a hammerhead from freaking Tau, which can literally kill any unit in one activation. But it only gets to activate 1, maybe 2 times a game because of the flyer rules. Does that bring you a lot of value to the game? Maybe, but it's kind of hard to argue that, right? So these abilities are going to let you move during your opponent's turn, or fight during your opponent's turn, shoot during your opponent's turn. And it allows you to deny their activations entirely. Let's say an opponent is going to be moving to shoot your unit, but you have a reactive move which allows you to get behind cover. Now they can't even shoot you. So not only are you getting more activations, you're denying your opponent's activations. You're stealing their limited activations while you're gaining extra ones. We as top players, we value these mechanics so highly, not necessarily because they're flashy, but because they rewrite the action economy of the game. So more activations, more opportunities to score points, trade units, take space, deny your opponent. That is absolutely critical. All right, now we're cooking. So prep work is making the game predictable. And you have to understand prep work if you're really going to grasp the power of unit activations. So let's break this one down. Here is what really makes your mind shift happen. And this is the sauce that's going to seriously bring you into 40K and elevate your play like so much. When you prep properly, you can actually map out almost the entire game before turn 1 because the board is fixed. The terrain is fixed. It is where it is, and there's nothing that's going to change where the terrain is. I don't think there's any abilities in the entire game that can actually change where the terrain is, right? Your deployment zones are fixed. You know where your deployment zone is. You know where your opponent's deployment zone is. Your threat ranges are fixed. The only thing that can alter a threat range would be an advance move, and you can calculate what the likelihood of that advance is. Kill pockets are predictable. What I mean by a kill pocket would be like an area of the board that if you stay in there, you know you're getting shot to pieces. Typically going to be, the center, right? And you know that both players' activations are limited. So with proper preparation, we get to know where fights are going to happen. We generally know where the fights are going to happen. They're going to happen on natural expansions. Occasionally, someone has to run in the middle to get an area denial. So every now and then, someone might charge into the center, things like this. But we know where fights are going to happen. We know what trades are going to be possible. I know for a fact that if I'm trying to kill Victrix Guard, I'm not going to be charging one unit of Orc Boys into them. That's not a possible trade I can actually make. What I might be able to do, though, is advance a unit of boys to deny my opponent's primary score against Victrix Guard. Even though I can't charge them to kill them, I can't make that trade, I can trade their primary points out, right? With proper prep, you're going to understand who actually gets to control the mid board and by when. If you're a super fast army with like lots of jump pack infantry and you have infiltrators, you know you're going to get to the mid board before your opponent, basically regardless of anything else. If your army is made to completely move block your opponent, say you're a jail list, you know you're going to get to mid board before them. So with proper prep, you're going to know how primary scoring is going to trend. When you know how you deploy, you're going to understand when and where and with what unit you're going to be able to get onto the objectives with. And you're going to understand what your opponent's realistic win conditions are. My opponent's going to have to figure out how to kill my Deathwing Knights when they're behind cover and line of sight blocking on my natural expansion. If they can't do that, they're not going to win the game. So things like this you can do, right? When you understand activation economy, the game stops feeling like chaos and it really starts feeling a heck of a lot more like chess. So let's do a quick case study. We're going to talk about the World Championships. And if you want to know my World Championships list, I did an entire video reviewing that. But prep revealed opponents' win conditions very, very early in that game. And it was actually really, really interesting because I prepped so thoroughly that I knew by turn 2 or turn 3 of every single game at the Worlds whether my opponent still had viable win conditions, whether they had enough activations left to break my position, whether their primary score could ever catch up, what their only Hail Mary plays were. Like, how do they grasp victory from the jaws of defeat, right? And once I identified all that, all I had to do was avoid letting my opponent make those Hail Mary plays happen. And suddenly the game becomes stable, calm, and predictable. That's what autopilot actually looks like at high levels. Not laziness, but it's clarity. Now, one of the really interesting things that happened at Worlds was I had 3 games where I actually deviated from my prep work. And interestingly enough, the only 3 games where I deviated from my prep work are the 3 games that I lost. One of them, the nails started biting and I charged out. One of them, I just had a brain fart and I made a stupid charge. And then the other one, I just played the game completely opposite of the way that I had prepped for it. And it was, I don't know, nerves. It was because of unfamiliarity with my opponent's army that I allowed to happen. But that regardless of all that, it's because I chose not to stick to my prep work that I actually got annihilated in all those games. Because in review, had I stuck to my prep work, my opponents would have been screwed. And that's a player flaw of my own, one that I am trying to fix. So you can prep where your activations are going to happen before the game even begins. And when you do that, oh, my friends, you're going to be so much happier with the game. So how the heck are you going to be applying this? Let's apply this framework together, all right? Think in activations, not in units. Ask every single turn, how many meaningful activations do I get this turn? How many meaningful activations do my opponents get this turn? You're going to prioritize rules that give extra activations, and this can happen in the list building step. You're going to prioritize bringing fights on death. Guys who have a fight first heroic intervention, reactive moves. These are force multipliers, and more importantly, they're scoring multipliers. Because remember, Warhammer 40,000 is about winning by victory points, not by just destroying your opponent. You're going to prep terrain before the game starts, and you can do this at any tournament you ever attend because, well, with very limited exceptions. Practically every tournament I've ever been to has told me what the terrain is before I show up to the tournament. Now, I know there's a very rare tournament here and there that doesn't allow you, the World Championships weirdly being one of them. Whatever, but that's super, super rare to not have a player pack where you know what the terrain is going to be. So you can prep terrain before your games ever start. You'll get to identify your safe zones, your kill pockets, and like where you're going to be like contesting your opponent. So script the game in deployment. Predict where are your trades going to occur. Which objectives are going to flip on which turn? Like, when are you going to get to your natural? When are you going to try and deny your opponent's natural? Play this out in your head and actually dash it out. I do this on TTS before my games. When your opponent is going to run out of activations. By what time do you need your opponent running out of activations? And what is going to be the desperation play that they're going to have to make in order to try to beat you. So, for example, the desperation play that I put my opponents in all the time is that they have to kill a fully buffed squad of Deathwing Knights in this turn. And if they fail, they're going to lose. And it is such a brutal, brutal thing to put your opponent through, because if they're not, deployed in order to do that, they might just be completely boned. And then lastly, you get to deny their own win condition with your preparation. Don't give them that Hail Mary turn where they suddenly can just make that 1 12-inch charge that gives them the win. Avoid the single scenario where the game can flip. And you'll get this by learning how to apply the control of activations. So guys, why does this all feel like it's on autopilot? That's a good question. This is called game scripting. What we're doing is you are going to predict everything that's happened in the world. So when you know that your opponent's threats, when you know your threats, when you know your activations, your opponent's activations, scoring trends, and denial options, the game stops becoming super emotional. You aren't reacting turn by turn. You're actually executing a plan. We've spoken about this in other games or in other videos where we've spoken about following your game plan. You only actually adjust your game plan when something deviates from the expected script. Then this is the huge difference between intermediate players and consistently competitive players. And if you follow that, you're going to be a pretty happy camper. So guys, 40K becomes predictable with activation mastery. So what I want you to do is I want you to comment your biggest struggle with planning down below. Maybe I'll make a video based off of it. So subscribe more for war theory about Warhammer 40,000. And I am so excited to see you guys continue to improve and elevate the level of 40K throughout the world. So until next time, crump on. Bye-bye.